Good morning, all, and welcome to another weekly recruitment discussion from Jump. This week, we're going to sort of challenge the technology. We all know that over the COVID period, etc., that lots and lots of new technology came out. Everyone became embraced with technology, trying to move their business forward. And lots of people suddenly realized that their technology maybe isn't as good as it should be. So this week, I'm joined by Harry. Harry's from the Access Group, and he's going to give us some expert advice on technology. What's nice about Harry, he comes from a recruitment background. He started off life in recruitment as a resourcer to the temp market, grew into a temp consultant and a perm consultant, where he developed his passion for recruitment. Whereas most people sort of then look for a career in recruitment, Harry knew that his sort of passion really was in technology. So he created a path and found his way to the Access Group, where now he provides solutions and benefits to recruitment agencies on their complete software, no matter what. So as always, we like to kick off with a few stats about the market and see what's going in the market. So here's a quick couple of stats. So 75% of recruiters use recruitment or application tracking tools to find candidates. 94% of recruiters and hiring professionals say they're using recruitment software has positively impacted their hiring process. 86% of recruitment professionals say that using recruitment software has helped them hire faster. 78% of recruiters say that using an ATS has improved the quality of the candidates that they hire. However, stats tell us that 60% of applicants do not like to complete lengthy application forms. So can technology help us there? And 66% of candidates get insight about your company through pre-hiring interaction. So this again is about the technology that you can lead people to. So for the form from the forms sort of impressed by the CRM, the solutions to hire, etc. It's reported that 81% of candidates share positive experience with their peers and family, and 51% share it on social media. So can we use technology to help with that? So this week, I'm joined by Dave. As we all know, Dave loves technology. It's one of his passions from there, as it took him 6 years to get internet working in his house. Certainly the 6 years of Jump, it took a long time, didn't it, Dave, to get you to some sort of above 1 megabyte of data coming in and out.
I could shout louder and louder and everybody would hear me.
Yes, not quite right. The string and the string and the tin cans has gone from a long time, Dave.
The Rolodex doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, and as I say, we've got Harry joining us. So let's sort of jump straight in, because I think it's one of those sort of sessions that people like to listen to. So since lockdown, Harry, the tech market has changed hugely. So what do you think the biggest advancement in technology has been in the last 18 months?
Perfect. First off, thanks for having me and inviting me on, Howard and Dave. Pleasure being here, and hopefully I can provide some insight. I think in terms of technology, last 18 months, when does that take us? It takes us to January 2021. I think it's probably the easiest answer out there, but I think it remains. It's video. Video in multiple different formats, so not just necessarily for your video interviewing, but also in terms of different ways we can do it, whether that's just registration process, whether that's video right to work, or however we're doing that. Even though there's been some fantastic changes and adaptations of the video technologies we've gone across them 18 months, I think it's more become the usage. What I see and what I find is it's very much Marmite. Some people would love to use it, some people will not want to use it and they won't see it. But anything from a BD aspect or from just getting in them in interviews quickly. And I think the pandemic obviously accelerated that. But when now we talk hybrid working or work from home, which goes across a lot and debating on LinkedIn, videos become crucial to that, to getting in your interviews quicker, scheduling your diaries up, and actually having them and getting more in. And ultimately you qualify in your candidate, so you qualify out based on, is the candidate a good fit? Is the client a good fit for the candidate? And that happens quicker. So maybe not necessarily in terms of the advancement of the technology, that could have always been there, but in terms of the usage, I'd still be sticking with video on that one.
It's interesting. I remember sort of about 4 or 5 years ago up in Scotland, sort of announcing to the Scottish recruitment market that, the video wave is coming and you either get washed away with it. Is there a reason why you think that lots of recruitment agencies are still sort of not really engaging in video technology?
I think the I guess it's a fear of change. I think recruitment is always going to be a human-based industry. So people to people, you get a little bit of an environment around that. So particularly your industrial, your construction sectors, where you're going to want to register someone face to face and look in their eyes and go, you're going to work well for me and you're going to really provide for me as an agency. I think when it comes more to actually getting in the perm door or the contract door, where we can actually set up them interviews quicker, that's going to help. Some people just aren't privy to it. Some people maybe aren't as aware as how that's going to work. They may be using platforms like a Zoom or a Teams to actually just set up these, whereas there's different video platforms out there now that come in and do so much more in engaging your clients and candidates as well. And I think that's where that will continue to take off further as we go across this course of the year, really.
Okay.
It's interesting, isn't it, H? When our clients are applying or trying to win their clients, and they have to fill out an RFI or an invitation to tender or whatever it is, 4 or 5 years ago, absolutely for sure, one of the questions wasn't, what type of technology do you use and how do you use it? Whereas now, and I think some of this is post-COVID and Zoom and all of the things that we've learned in the past 2.5 years, now that is often one of the questions that a procurement department or the leader of the ITT from the client side will ask our agency owners, what do you use? How do you use it? How does it work for you? And of course, the lead on question is then how are you going to make it work for us? Have you seen that a bit, Harry? Is technology becomes more important?
Yeah, I see more people from that point where we talk RFIs and going out and winning business. I see more people involved in your business development teams from the agency side of things coming on to the demos or earlier in the conversation. Whereas before they'd probably be left out a little bit and towards the end and just go, are you happy with that bit of software they're doing? But now they're looking for value adds from that as well, in terms of, even though it's a very rich market in terms of getting jobs now, you've got to look in the future as well. And it's how are we going to continue to evolve and adapt to make sure our agency is front and center of our client's choice, really. And so, yeah, I see more people nowadays in the BD departments and actually coming across that do more of the hard selling than I did before. Normally it would be your account managers and how they use and manage the placements rather than actually winning business.
So let's flip that question, because this is something that Dave and I come across constantly, and the rest of the Jump team come across constantly. We constantly hear from the recruitment agencies that we're coaching and mentoring that their recruiters don't like using their technology stack. So how do you think that tech providers can help solve this issue? Because it's a real big issue that they're just not engaging with the technology stack that they have.
Yeah, a huge issue. And I think that's probably the number one point I speak to prospects and customers. You'd be surprised at the difference between I'm not happy with this functionality or what I get out of my current tech provider compared to we don't know how to use it properly. We think it does more, but we don't know how to. So I think that's going to become, from a tech provider point of view, for all of the companies in the market, that's going to become a real key point of interest in the future. I think it starts from an agency point of view. Plan, what do you want from tech? How do you want to achieve that? And what do we want our recruiters to be doing with it? And then how we actually move in there. So when you decide to purchase and you choose your preferred supplier, often it can get left out also. How much training do we believe we need? How much training does the tech provider believe we need? And where are we going to go to that? But it's then not the case of, right, we've done our onboarding period, that should just stop. And there should be a cutoff point, because you pick up any solution on day one, you're in the day-to-day mix of your role as it is. It's very difficult to learn the software and to go into that. So it takes a bit of a bedding in period. In my mind, where the market from a technology point of view is going to go, is it's going to continue, and we've already seen this across multiple providers. It's going to continue to go with walkthrough guides or video tutorials or something that's interactive. Long gone are the days of open up a 300-page manual, although some people do still ask for that. But it's going to have to go to interactive guides and interactive support between people. And I think you've got to get a little bit of recurring support around there and refreshers. So what do we look at in the long run over a course of, say, a contract term, on how we're going to remain engaged as a recruitment firm and our consultants that are not only here today, but if we continue to grow, how do they come in and they're also engaged with the technology and why we purchased this and what we want to get out of it? Because if you don't, it very quickly turns, and the point of that question, it very quickly can turn to negative, because if one person stops using it, it sort of transcends and it goes across the business. And then if you begin to find it more difficult, it's more difficult to gain the momentum back of using the technology and reminding yourself and remembering why you purchased that. There's a reason you go through your procurement process or your your tenders and your multiple different demos. And it's because ultimately you get to the end where you find a tech provider that's going to provide something of real value to your business. So we can't forget that. But I think refresher courses on training, having someone in customer success or an account manager that you can communicate with and make sure you're getting there to continue to engage with technology. Normally it's the case that technology does it, but you don't know how to do it. So how do we make sure we're engaged into doing that interactive learning courses, refreshers, and so on that in terms of that guide, and making sure we're constantly updating and reminding ourselves learning should never be static in anything that we do, and improvement should never be static. So why don't we take that same attitude towards tech in terms of we should continue learning about how to tech, and we should continue to adapt and use it to the best of our capability. We can't forget, if you're signing up the SaaS world now, we're not 10 years ago where it's you pay up front and you own that piece of tech in SaaS, where it's monthly. Your SaaS solution should constantly be evolving and updating anyway by your product teams, and that should also be one of the reasons you've gone with someone on what's going to continue to advance. So new features will come out. Do you highlight these new features and do you then learn them, or are you still embedded in that day one training?
So if we looked at that, because obviously lots of that is pushing that back to the recruitment agency, which I think in some cases right. So do you think then the tech providers should be providing more training, and I'm not talking about more paid training, but training that would enhance the stickiness of the product to the business, rather than just saying, here's the basic training? Because this is what we see. We see the basic training coming in, and yet there might be 10 ways of doing that, and 10 people might have their own preferred ways of doing that, where you normally train a very generic way of doing it and then leave it at that. Do you think training should, from the tech providers, be more advanced and more on a regular basis as part of the fee that you charge?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't mean if it did come across as it shouldn't all be on the agency. Yes, the agency should do some of the work, but so should the tech provider, because ultimately you want happy customers. Otherwise, your business is going to start losing customers and churning, and you're suddenly going to find yourself in a bit of a hole. Tech providers, within that fee or the subscription that you're paying, how do we do about it? Because it's not necessarily let's do everything all at once. You do that key bits of training to start with, but then we may provide something a few months down the line as a refresher. And that may be a couple of hours. It may be something really simple, but just someone to speak to and to communicate with, to actually directly know, okay, what are you gaining out of your software? What have you found has worked well since we've done there? What have you found has not worked well? And then the tech provider being able to work with you to make sure you exaggerate the bits that are working well and you improve on the bits that aren't working well. But aside from just basic communication from the tech provider, that ease of use around any learning content that the tech provider is providing, which should always be updated and it should always be improved upon to make it easily digestible for each consultant, no matter what their role or tenure within the business and using the software.
So do any of your clients, Harry, when they implement an Access product or any other product that you know of, do any of them do a test where you've got to pass that test to a certain level to show that you are using the product?
Not necessarily in terms of directly, if you pick the software up and there's a mark out of 100%, there is learning-based courses where they've got to complete the courses and then you'll be asked around that and go from there. But it's not, I have adapted my way of using this technology and I've got down my scoring system out of that. I think that's a good idea. I've seen some agencies I've worked with that have assigned their project manager, and they will go directly and they will find out, okay, how do we work and how do we improve on that, and are we getting the most out of it? But no, we learning-based courses, but generally in terms of that test, not from my point of view.
Okay.
So just as a side question, because obviously lots of recruitment agencies have problem with their tech stack and the usage by the recruiters. If an agency is having issues with their tech stack and recruiters engaging with it, how would you change that?
In terms of engagement, I guess clear and concise and simple messages from the agency to the recruiters, and then ultimately that person that holds that technology within the agency, whether that's an MD, an operations manager, someone running the project, to have clear and concise communication with the tech provider as well, so that can come back. Because then ultimately, if we find out across a large percentage of our team, they don't know how to do X on a piece of software, you'd be surprised in terms of tech providers are going to want happy customers. So they're going to try their best where suitable and where relevant to make sure that you are going to be happy in every possible way. So I think clear communication is what it comes down to in most parts of, we're using this technology not to, and I do it myself here in terms of CRM systems and admin, but we're doing this for a particular reason. So we need to be able to use it. If you're struggling to use it or you're not finding it great, okay, we've gone through that procurement process. We'll speak to the tech provider. They're going to help us and make sure we are using that to the purpose of why we purchased it.
So one thing you keep sort of mentioning there is procurement. So, we have discussions on a weekly basis with agency owners about upgrading their tech stack. What should they be looking at when considering replacing either all or part of their tech stack? And really, how often should they start to think about replacing their tech stack?
Yeah, so I guess there's quite an open question from that point in terms of, it depends on the size of agency. Some people are smaller, permanent agencies, you're going to look to replace it very, very rarely at the end of the day. Whereas if you're a mid-market, you might look a little bit more as you advance and you take different levels, and you're more higher end, they don't want to replace it because you've got so much data migration. I think the biggest thing I advise when you're actually looking into technology is build out almost an I-beam in terms of what are my non-negotiables. So what am I using at the moment in terms of tech that I cannot possibly lose? What are my desirables in terms of, I really want to gain this, which I don't have at the moment? And what are my things in there that, I like them, but if we don't get them, but we've got our desirables out of a different provider, that we can sort of get away with that and we're happy with that outcome because we get more value. So you build out in terms of what's important and plan. Now, I see I think the best run projects and where people get the most out of the tech is where there's clear planning from both sides. So I would always advise, rather than just go, I want to go and view 10 demonstrations to start with of X software and whatever software I want to look at, to plan why I want that software in, decide what we want to gain from it, and then you can filter down. I'd rather have a conversation with someone to start with at a tech provider rather than going through the demo. The problem with doing a demo straight off the bat and doing 10 of them is you're getting what the tech provider does well and where they see themselves. What you're not actually getting out of that demo in generic terms is what it's going to do for you. You're getting what it's doing for so many other agencies, but as we all know, recruitment works slightly different across multiple agencies. If you're speaking to the tech provider first, they'll work with you. They'll tell you if they think they've got a suitable solution or if they don't think they've got a suitable solution. I've recommended people to other solutions before in terms of competitors where maybe they're more suited. If you're speaking and having that conversation pre-demo, you'll get much more out of the initial demo and you'll have a better understanding. And ultimately, it saves both of you time. From the tech provider point of view and the agency point of view, nobody wants to be going into that demo and having that canned demo of this is what the software does for lots of customers, but we don't know if that's relevant for you or not as of yet.
How do you find, Harry, when you are engaging with an agency about a piece of software or putting some kit together or an API with existing software, from the agency side, do you find it best to deal with like the agency owner, the MD, the person who's buying the product? Or is it better, you mentioned earlier in answer to one of the questions about an agency having a program manager or a project director for it? Does it make a difference to you as a supplier, how you engage with the agency in terms of the implementation?
It doesn't make a difference in terms of how we engage, and it absolutely shouldn't. If you've got a set project manager, I think it makes it easier, but you shouldn't look at it and go, right, I want to speak to the agency owner, for example, because that's ultimately who's going to sign off. Right. If the agency has taken the time and gone, this is our project owner, or these are the people involved in the project, you've got to treat that with great respect as well, because they've been put in there for a reason. And actually, normally it shows we're absolutely dead serious on getting this project moving. We're not just going to come in and view and window shop almost. And bring that across. I think when you bring people in, it's probably not relevant to have everyone from the company in on all of the demos. I think tailor them. If you've got your project manager or if your ops manager or your MD is running something around that software, let's do almost bite-sized sessions of demos on certain areas that are going to be key. So your business development people will do one session on this, or your temp consultants or your resources are going to do one session on this, because then you're going to get to what's relevant. If you're sat in there on an hour and a half, 2-hour demo and you've got everyone on and you're trying to push everything into one bit, you're not going to get the full features of the software. You're not going to get a chance to ask most of your questions. And the people on the call are going to be a little bit unengaged when they're going through an hour until they get to their part on that. So I think it's best to include everyone, but at the right stages as well, and actually let's center on one particular point.
So in your experience of this sort of process of people going, how often do you get a business owner or the board of directors of the business actually getting you engaged with the actual coal face of the business that are using the product? How often does that happen? Because to me, I think that sometimes is an issue that the owner loves it, but the staff hate it.
Yeah, I think that's the one. It worries me a little bit in terms of when they don't get the teams engaged, because as the business owner, and you've got the absolute right to go and make the decision in terms of, I believe great value in this software, and it may be an absolute great fit. But if your team of consultants or payroll or perm consultants, anyone in the team feels unengaged around that process, one, they're not bought into it completely on an emotional attachment point of view. If they feel a little bit more involved as that part of the process, it generally, as a project goes much better, both pre-sale and after sale. So when they're involved, they've understood what reasons we're using this software as well. I think too many don't get people involved within the team to start with, and that's a bit of an issue as we go across there. But when they do, whether it's early on or whether it's a little bit later on, the project goes a lot more seamless in terms of all ends.
So let's move that on. So I think if this question will become subjective, I think, to everybody who's on the call, is we know that technology is moving at the moment at a huge pace of knots. So what do you see coming down the line that will be the next revolutionary piece of kit that will give, let's say, the early adopters a commercial advantage?
Yeah, great question, and very difficult. If I could have gone back 3 or 4 years, I'd have invested in a video platform. I think I've seen stuff around Zoom and so it's difficult. I think when I think of around what's going to becoming next, I think of 3 main things, and some of them are already out there in parts, and some of them just need improving, and some probably not quite there as of yet in the market. I think anything to do with candidate onboarding in that cycle. I think you mentioned at the top there. How do we keep candidates engaged early in the process? So I think onboarding, in terms of software, you're most likely going to need that through an app. In terms of where it's interactive, though, it's not a registration form sat on someone's website or a link sent out. It's got to be interactive, and your candidate goes back to that app, or if then there's a document requested, it comes back. But it's got to be interactive, it's got to be engaging, it's got to be easy. Because with it being a candidate market at the minute, if your candidate's going through a 3-page onboarding form, probably not going to fill it out, and you may lose out on good candidates from that. So I think anything onboarding in terms of the software that can come into the market that integrates in with your website, your CRM systems, and actually then funnels through, I think will be key. I think management information as another one. Actually, I see a lot on LinkedIn at the moment where BD really easy in comparison to what it used to be at the moment. Lots of roles going on. It's more about the candidates. So in terms of management information and reporting and analytics, I think that's going to become more key, not a KPI point of view, but actually understanding where your value is. What are your good clients? What are your bad clients? What money do I get from this piece of software? And what is that return? Or this job board? How much am I spending with them? What's my return on that per candidate added per placement? So when we talk management information and actually bringing that across, I think that becomes sort of key and engaging from there, and bringing that in. And I think the last one, I think it's going to become bigger in the UK. It's already in the US a lot more prevalent, but I think on-demand pay, in terms of the work you accrue as a temp or a contractor, particularly in the lower level of pay sectors, can we draw down on that earlier than a weekly or bi-weekly or monthly payroll? Because as we talk around fuel and cost of living and everything else, if we're not able to pay the workers more, and there's lots in that in terms of where there should be increases at the moment, if we're not able to pay, are we able to access our pay quicker? So if I've gone and completed a shift, can I go and draw down on that money quicker? I think that would encourage more people to take shifts, take them on shorter notice, do additional hours, because they know they've got access to that money. So I think on-demand pay is going to become more of a thing in the UK as we go over the next 2 or 3 years.
I can hear some of our clients now already cringing and sort of curling up and going, on-demand pay, how much is that going to cost us, and what's that going to look like from the client's point of view if putting cost up? But as we say, if the Americans have got it, then we will catch it further down the line. So if that's coming into America, that's a really interesting thing. That means having your electronic timesheeting systems, etc., be more interactive with the outer user. And it also means then there's more compliance and there's more transparency in what's actually happening, because you're seeing it every day. So I think that'll be a really interesting move if that actually does come in.
Yeah, I think it's definitely got to link up in multiple areas. Otherwise, it doesn't work. If it's separatist as working in the system, it's not going to work. But if it can draw down and it can interact with your payroll system or your booking system and come from there, it becomes a valuable tool to the candidate, and actually comes in from there. And like you mentioned, if the US have done something and it's become bigger over there, the UK normally follows.
It's also one of those things, isn't it? It's that as a particular topic, it can be a competitive advantage for our clients, for the agencies. If they've got it, they can attract better candidates or different candidates because they're offering them that service. It's a little bit like those that were saying 3 or 4 years ago, oh, the only thing about video interviewing is we're all in the office, we don't need it. And suddenly those that adopted it, got on board with it quickly, were using it. Now it's common practice. It could be that on-demand pay becomes common practice in, I don't know, Harry, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever.
Yeah,
but those that have got it early do better.
I think it takes a little bit of it will take a little bit of time because it's an adjusted way of thinking as well. And it's not necessarily what do I get out of this, but you mentioned at the start, Dave, in terms of RFIs, people come in and go, what have you got in your tech stack? How do you attract candidates better? How do you find me better candidates? Well, I'm working as closely with my candidate as possible, to the point where we're giving them all of these good things and we're allowing them to actually decide and to ultimately do more hours. And I'd be interested from the US in stats coming across. Does that increase on the hours taken up? Does it increase on candidates' availability? Does it increase on people turning up for shifts and reducing no-shows and actually coming across? It's not necessarily then going to be translated from a cost to the agency back onto the client like video interviewing wouldn't. But it's just trying to guess where the market goes. Ultimately, the market may not go that way, and it's difficult to say. But I see that as becoming bigger as we go into the next few years.
If you think of the age group that's coming into that market, that's the age group of instant demand. I want it now, I want that instant satisfaction, and that sort of cures that instant satisfaction. Does it rather than having to wait a week or a month to get your pay to your pay, that you can just draw it down as and where you see fit.
Well, you look at Amazon Prime, and I order something today, it's going to arrive at my door tomorrow. Like 10, 15 years ago, you think that's impossible, you'd wait a week or so, and everything is becoming shorter cycles. A lot is becoming on monthly contracts or recurring in terms of your financing your cars. You've got things like even your clothes now you pay, and you sometimes put that on a monthly basis. But it's all about quicker and user engagement, whether that's a candidate, whether that's a person buying a retail product. It's all becoming quicker, and that as society is a different question in terms of if that's a good thing or not. But everyone wants something quicker in terms of, can I get that? And when you look at things like payday loans, which people on the breadline may be needing at certain points, or if they're a little bit shorter, if you have something unexpected come up and you need money quicker, it's not necessarily you're always going to use that solution, but it's there as a safeguard and a keeping in terms of, I've got that there before I go and pay my APR rate on a payday loan and pay that back next week at payday.
So as we talk about that, and we're looking at early adopter and commercial advantage, there is so much tech out there now. So besides CRMs, what would you say are the 3 most important pieces of tech that will give the best return on investment to an agency from a sales point of view? Yeah,
so I think return on investment is an interesting one in terms that I don't see it as necessarily always what wins me more clients. It's what keeps me with clients and what keeps me making placements with them. I think one that's becoming more prevalent in the market is marketing through your branding on a website, through your LinkedIn social presence, your referrals and your references from particular candidates and going there. So your actual company and your consultant branding is becoming bigger. So anything that helps with that, whether that be website, whether it be things like Pager on LinkedIn and coming across and bringing in their software and actually getting that message out clearer. This is what we specialize in. This is what we do. And this is how we do it. So you get people in the door that way and actually coming out and marketing. So I think that's one of them. I think you asked for free, didn't you? I think in terms of onboarding again, even though I've mentioned it before as what can come and what can be improved on, which absolutely can, anything right now that's making it easy for your candidates to onboard or vet them or make sure they're compliant is going to be key in getting them through the door. I think there's vast improvements in that sector, in that area that will come, but I think anything onboarding is in there. And again, you're reporting on anything client engagement. How do we engage with our clients and how do we make that? So is it just this is an old-fashioned client and we want to send on their CV? Is it we need to use video interviewing and we're going to send on a candidate profile? They've done a few minutes video intro to you and we've got 3 candidates here in front of you. Is it we're going to allow you to rate certain candidate profiles and they're going to come back and notify? Anything that makes that client engagement easier so we're not waiting on CVs to be returned with feedback or things aren't going sort of quiet around that instance, because that's where you can lose placements. If we're getting in all the BD and we're getting these roles in and we're actually doing the real hard work of finding the candidate, in theory, getting feedback on these candidates we're sending across should be the easier part. But we need to make that as easy as possible for the client. So we make sure we're getting that quicker. Candidate market is great for so many reasons, but it also means as an agency, if you're putting a candidate forward for a role, if they're waiting a week or 2 weeks to get feedback and then to go into a first interview, you've probably missed the boat because they've probably already done 3 or 4 interviews and now they've got their preferred companies. And actually your company might have been the better fit. But if we're not communicating quicker, that provides its own problem. So I think anything client engagement on that can be crucial, and that comes across multiple forms.
So you mentioned Pager as one sort of from a marketing point of view. Are there tools out there now that you think, are absolutely almost obligatory and should be in most recruitment agencies to drive those agencies forward?
I think you've got your standard ones that have always been expected in terms of driving agencies forward. I think marketing has come up. It's a bit similar with video. I think in terms of when we mentioned what's really grown over the last couple of years, I think obligatory. I think if you're looking to build a long-term success and to get your candidates and clients coming to you directly, I think you have to build that brand from there. So I think that becomes more important. Not everyone has it, and software like that's going to come in and market from that point. But I think that's going to become more prevalent in the industry because we've seen, and I'm sure we've all seen the prices of certain job boards creeping up and some going sky high. It's how do we make sure our cost is spread so all our eggs aren't in one basket. So if we do get a massive price hike, we're not screwed effectively, and we can move and we can realign our focus into different areas because we're not just invested in one particular area.
So then if we look at that, the SME market is, sometimes I'm aghast about the amount of tech that they buy and then never actually implement properly. So to you, how important is the tech stack that it links to the recruitment process from cradle to grave? And how close do you think that a company is in actually developing a system that can do that without having multiple APIs and then the cost of all those APIs coming in, et cetera, or separate apps coming in? How close do you think we are to getting that type of system?
I think we're getting closer. I think there's still finalized. I could probably off the top of my head know 4 or 5 different tech providers that are getting closer. But when we say cradle to grave, there's multiple different areas. When we talk from getting the candidate on board and then ultimately up to paying them and invoicing, and so there's a lot that do bits in between. There's a lot that do the start bit to the middle, and then there's some that can almost do it all. But then when technology advances in video and marketing software or on-demand pay and everything else, that becomes a little bit more constraint on there. I think it's built out as a big thing in terms of actually doing it straight away. But when you mentioned there, tech companies not getting stuff implemented or having to use multiple APIs, when we start off, it depends on the size of agency. And again, it's planning on how we want to actually go about and what we want from the software. If I'm a smaller agency, I don't need to go and get all of that at once. I need to get the key bits. What I do need is I need a bit of predictability around, as I grow, if I hit my growth plans and I hire more consultants, how that's actually going to come in and what I can then go and purchase. I would never necessarily go and recommend go and buy the full end-to-end system at the moment because it's supply and demand. So when providers are in there and if the supply is low, but the demand is quite high, ultimately your pricing is going to be quite high if you want that full cradle to cradle to grave solution, I think smaller size agencies focus on the key bits that you really need to start with. Let's look at what's cost effective. And the larger agencies, as we look at it, again, let's make sure we pinpoint really what's going to be important here and what we can do, not just day one, but where we go into that contract. Again, a tech provider these days should never be, I've signed up with them, we've now become stagnant, that's what we've got for the term of our contract. It should continue to evolve, it should continue to adapt to the market needs and wants, but you should also have different options with that tech provider as well, and not be stuck in a corner and unable to grow with it.
So if we looked at that and said, I understand the cost, because some about 18, but probably not more, probably 2.5 years ago now, we were having in-depth conversations and mentoring a client that's what they were doing. They were trying to implement the cradle to grave system, including all the recruitment, all the back office, payroll, timesheets, the whole lot. And their price point is where we said it killed you, because their price point was going to be something around about £500-600 per license per person. But obviously not everybody needs the cradle to grave. You only need certain sections. If you're a recruiter, you only need the first section. If you're an account, you only need the back section, etc., etc. And we said that's what's going to kill your product, because no one's going to buy it at that price point. Do you think there is a price point that you could then start to build a company, as in build a tech company that can provide those things piecemeal, as you say, as the company grows? Because we always say, if you're a one-man company, think like a 5-man company. If you're a 5-man company, think like a 20-man company, because your infrastructure needs to be able to grow and grow with you. But there's no point you growing faster than your infrastructure, because that holds you back. Your infrastructure should grow faster than your people. So do you think then that is what's going to come? You're the Access Group, you're buying lots and lots of technology. Do you think at one point they're going to merge all that technology to create a cradle to grave system?
Yeah, and I guess that's the whole point. And in terms of, you have that central solution, and then your different systems link in and talk to each other and integrate to go that cradle to grave. And that's what becomes important. But you're absolutely right, Howard. You're a 1-man, a 5-man band. You're probably not going to need that entirety of the cycle, but you want to have the knowledge that it's there in the future. I think the idea is you can build into that. An interesting point on price points, your price point has to be, and how you commercialize it has to be different between the software. Going cradle to grave, if we lump it in as one, you're going to find the software price isn't going to actually fit in, because your payroll department and the amount of payees or people you're putting through payroll or timesheets or so is going to be entirely different to your consultant usage on your CRM system. And that's going to be entirely different to what we may view as our onboarding tool or our website solution. So there's differences in the software, even though it links in and it talks together to try and create that ultimate cradle to grave. You've got to have it priced differently. Otherwise, yeah, like you mentioned, it's going to very quickly turn someone off the market in terms of that, because you price different things for the suitable aspect.
Okay, so here's a question I think that lots of people sort of think about quite often. If you could give all SME owners, one piece of advice with regards to technology, what would that be?
Plan. I mean, this is why I like working in the project manager's plan. It's when we're looking at actually bringing in technology, plan. So where are we falling down at the moment? What are we doing really well on our software? What do we really like? How long is it going to take? What's left on our contract? How much are we paying? What return do we want out of it? When do we want something implemented? Are we going to have a crossover point of, if it's a CRM, a crossover of we need to be live before that? So we're making sure we've got that crossover. I think planning is absolutely crucial. And you find the more time you put into the plan at the start of the process, you'll have less hiccups, either towards the end of the process or the horror cases after the sale. You find out it's not got something that you absolutely need. If you've got that planning in there, you will get your answers back, and you'll find better use for your time. But then you work in unison to make sure that plan's met from both an agency standpoint, an internal point from the agency, and a technology provider. Everyone can align in terms of that. So if you're not planning and you're going in, I just want to see the latest flash features, it is almost a little bit, you're going to see some features and go, that feature looks amazing, or that feature looks amazing. Let's go with this particular bit of software. when actually you may lose some of the real key fundamentals. So it's plan its don't get overawed by some really fancy features or terms or so that come in there, and then learn to adopt to whatever software you're doing. No software works exactly the same in terms of how it's going to work. So you are going to need to adopt different ways of working and adopt into the software. And as we mentioned again at the very start, most times I have people come to me, it's about software adoption rather than I really need to change software because of this feature. It's normally the adoption. So plan and adopt, I'd be saying.
So that's really quite interesting. So let's flip back to one of the questions earlier, which I think is we've created this throwaway culture, and we've created where everything is short period of time, get rid of it, move on to the next thing, etc. And that's coming across most things now. So how often do you think that an SME agency should be reviewing its tech stack and changing its tech stack?
I think it depends on the advancement of your tech stack. If all of a sudden you're not with a lead product or a product that's not being actively developed, you'd probably want to be engaging and thinking around, right, what's going to be our next move? If your product is continuously developing and you're happy with the updates that are coming out as part of your SaaS service, then great, because we can continue to do that. So unless you then go and change and you add in a different division where you've got more complex compliance, as an example, or complex rulings that your current software stack doesn't fit into, then fine. But it should always be a review if you're not adapting and evolving, and that's from the tech provider's point of view, in terms of, are they continuing to keep up with market trends? The question you asked me around of what may come next, is your tech provider going to keep up with market trends so we don't fall behind effectively? As soon as we start falling behind, that's when we need to start reviewing. That may be a year, it may be 3 years, it may be 5, it may be 10. And you'd hope it's as little as possible because it's a big process. But the day you buy your software, from day one in the contract, you do not want that to be the same piece of software come the end of your contract. You want that to have significantly advanced. And if it's not, then it's the case of sort of looking at what we can get and more out of certain areas from different providers.
I've got a question for you, Harry, just towards the end. Everybody in recruitment talks about the M&A activity and recruitment merging and lots of people getting bought in. It's never really happened. Do you think that's going to happen more in the tech market? Because obviously Access are one of the very biggest tech companies in the UK, let alone in recruitment. Do you think that there's going to be a lot of tech companies merging and buying other tech companies?
I think particularly when there's going to be niche areas in terms of, as we mentioned, the go forward pieces of software or things that come in, there may be niche areas, smaller tech companies pop up, and you may have the goal of then selling it to a larger organization like an Access or a Bullhorn, as an example. You may have that goal in terms of getting them into an integrated stack. I think we'll see it more. I think it's clearly something we do, and that works well in terms of how we can put that across. I think we will continue to see more of it as we go across, and merger and acquisition, ultimately, because the tech provider now, you have to provide more than ever to the agency, and that's absolutely right. We should continue to provide more than we are doing today or more than we have done in the past, because the market continues to evolve and adapt. So I think we'll see more of it. I don't know how much more, but I'd imagine it more in them niche, smaller areas rather than your large scale systems and coming across, but niche software, yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting when we sort of recap this. What we're saying then is that as an SME recruiter, we should be reviewing our tech stack on a reasonably regular basis and looking to the future to see what's coming in so that we can start to plan for that. What we've got to think is what's going to become redundant and what's going to become the new way of working to give you a commercial advantage. And therefore, you may have a one-stop shop, but you may have several shops that you have to shop in, and it's how those shops then
you may have a one-stop shop. You may be a small perm agency, and you may have no real want to grow to large head count, and you may not need that one-stop shop for that reason. So it's about what works best for you. I think the key point, and we talked about it off air just before the webinar started, you are never going to replace the human element of recruitment. That is not what software is there for. Absolutely not. It's about software's there to enable you, to make your life a bit easier in doing your tasks. So ultimately you can spend more time speaking and communicating with your candidates and clients, because otherwise every agency would have the same software and you'd all go in and you'd all be doing exactly the same sort of numbers and getting on the same roles. Software is there to enable you as consultants or payroll staff or agency owners. It's not there to remove people. It's not there to hinder people. If it's not enabling you, that's when you review.
Brilliant. So lots of information, lots of things that we think we should be looking at. So lots of owners there with a view. So Harry, thanks for your input. It's been sort of really interesting to listen to, but more interesting to sort of tick the brain over and think, right, what can we do with our clients and help them move their tech stack forward, especially that engaging their recruiters further into that tech stack to get it to work, as well as looking at the advancements rather than just buying whatever's new and flashy. It's what fits your purpose and how you can then make that, as you say, not replace the recruiter, but give the recruiter more time to do more lead generation, business generation activities that will create money at the end of the day. So it is about an enabler, not a disabler within the business from there. Absolutely. So Harry, thanks for your input. It's been much appreciated. Next week, we have Neil Carberry on. Neil Carberry will obviously be giving us all the stats and facts and figures coming out of the recruitment marketplace and out of the government. So it'll be a really interesting session to see what Neil has to say and what the market's going to look like over the next 6 to 12 months. So please join us next week. Harry, once again, thanks very much. Dave, thanks for your input. And we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you all. Pleasure being on.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Thanks, Harry.